Behind the Shades.
I'm Lillian. I call myself a parenting strategist. I've been doing this work now for 25 plus years because of the journey that I've had with our son, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. You can find me mostly on Facebook as Lillian Reekie, parenting strategist, or there's my website there, parentsupportnetwork.com.au. I look forward to connecting with anybody who feels aligned today.
Perfect. So let's start from the genesis of this and let us know, how did you get involved in this and why?
Now, how many hours did you say we had? So
we have all the time in the world. Remember, it's morning where you are, so I have all the entire morning.
I'm a teacher by profession. I'm a parent of two now adult sons. So my eldest son is 37. My youngest son is 30. And my youngest son, well, my eldest son was a typical kid, well-behaved, compliant, cooperative, good kid, didn't have any challenges with him. Child number two comes along with husband number two, by the way. My second son was born and came into this world angry. He really was. He was angry from the moment he could start communicating. Even before he was talking, he showed, anger, and he was oppositional, and he was defiant. And by the time he was a little toddler, he was uncooperative. He was a very challenging little boy, really, really challenging. I already had a huge interest in holistic health and have been on that path for a long time. And, we already practice fairly healthy practices, although we did learn a lot more on this journey. And when my son was 3.5 years old, it was evident that things were not kind of progressing as you would hope as a parent. Like, he really was over the top. And we originally, so he went into, when I went back to work, he went into childcare, and the childcare centres absolutely struggled with him because of his defiance, because of his hyperactivity, because of his sometimes aggression, and the nature. And he was just a challenging child. He was cute and adorable, but he was also really challenging. And at 3.5 years old, in his 4th childcare centre, so he went to 5 childcare centres because over less than 2 years, because basically the carers could not deal with him. Either the carers couldn't deal with him, or the parents of other children put pressure on the carers there to get rid of him because they didn't want him around their children. So that was really hard for me as a parent. I'm a good parent. I'm a positive person. I'm a good person, a good person all round. And it was really challenging for me to hear this. And then at age 3.5, one of the childcare centres brought in a child psychologist who, in her wisdom, viewed him for the day, supposedly, and diagnosed him initially with childhood depression, which I thought was interesting because I thought, if anybody's depressed here, it's the mother. But anyway, he was diagnosed with childhood depression. And can you believe, Terrain, he just turned 4 when the official diagnosis came in, and they recommended medicating him with antidepressants as a 4-year-old, just 4. He was then diagnosed further by a whole myriad of, doctors and pediatricians and psychologists and psychiatrists with ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, and ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now, I'm not into labels. If I knew then what I know now, I would never have even gone down that path, because I don't think that we need to be diagnosing. These children do not have disorders, but that's another whole story. But that was our journey 25 years ago. So I never woke up one day and said, oh, I might become a parenting strategist and a parenting coach and write 6 books about parenting. I never thought about that. But because of our journey with our son, the universe, took me on this path of discovery with him and the journey that we had with him. So it's now a topic, and we've had quite a roller coaster journey, as you'll hear as we explore this story a little bit more, where particularly the years 3 to 5 were very challenging, and then 13 to 15 10x challenging. So it's been quite a journey.
I know for me, growing up, I grew up with my mother and my father, and I was just defensive because I just felt that no one wanted me around, right? But my grandmother is such a inspirational figure to me, and my childhood wasn't easy as well. And I could just imagine that if someone, depending on the situation, similar to what you're describing, if I was medicated or if I was maybe viewed differently, how much different I would have been as a person today versus how I am now. Looking back, did that cross your mind thinking, wow, I almost put my child in a difficult situation because I was just trying to figure it out like many others?
Absolutely. I can't see that I would have ever said yes to medication. It was so against my being, but I do coach with a lot of families who do medicate only because they don't have other answers and they don't know what else to do. And they're, for want of a better word, they're quite desperate. We were desperate for answers, but that was not our answer. And we had I can't tell you how many, over a 12-month period, we had like a handful of professionals say, this child needs to be medicated. And we said, thank you so much, but no, thank you, goodbye. And that was it. Like we just weren't prepared to take that path. But it was a difficult path for my husband and I as we explored what we needed to do and what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong. And it was challenging for all of us. Even my eldest son, who was prior to his younger brother coming along at 7.5, we had a happy and harmonious home. He was a cooperative kid, a quiet, a compliant kid, just got on with life without any major challenges. And then along comes his brother. So he's our youngest son coming into our world was both a blessing and a challenge, for all of us.
I'll get some of my exes and maybe they should be medicated. So do you know the name of this person that was suggesting it? Maybe we can give a couple of referrals. But when you and your husband at that time were going through it, how much strength was being pulled or maybe even tested in your relationship while dealing with that? Because it's probably something many couples go through.
Huge terrain. I am in the very fortunate situation that I have the most amazing, amazing husband. We have been together now for 35 or so years, married for 33 this year. And not once in my relationship with him has he raised his voice to me, not once. So we've been frustrated with each other. We've had, differences of opinions, but he is he still tells me every day he loves me, that I'm beautiful, that I'm amazing, that he's proud of me. So I was very, very lucky to have an amazing husband. In saying that, though, I coach with a lot of families who don't have that and who struggle, particularly the mums who struggle with either not having a partner, so they've separated, and they're dealing with a challenging situation on their own, or they have a partner, a male partner, who is not really very supportive. And particularly when we start delving into, the challenges that have brought them to that point, and when I introduce the nurtured heart approach, which is very alternative way of communicating and relationshiping, and I'd love to share with your viewers a little bit more about that later. But a lot of men think, oh, that's just a tree hugging kind of thing. We must discipline our children. We must have clear, rules, and we must, do all this sort of stuff. So men, no offense to the men, but men don't seem as open to change when it comes to parenting and relationships as the women. I'm sorry to say, in 25 years of experience, like probably 90% of my audience in 25 years are the women, are the mums or the female.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine the difficulty, especially if I give a male perspective, because our view is more rigid in a way, right? And it's more so like, okay, this isn't working. Okay, let me try this, but it's one and done. Right? And in your experience, you're probably like, okay, have you tried this? Okay, if this isn't working, can you tweak this and try this now? Okay, if this is part of, can you tweak that? Do you find that the reason for that is maybe lack of understanding, lack of flexibility, or is it just, I'm a man, I don't care, you do it?
Well, I think it's kind of a generational thing, because if you think of past generations, we were parented in a certain way, and the male role model out of, the male, the father figure, was seen to be, the leader of the house, and I go out and earn the living. And even though things are different these days, even though often, both parents are working and both parents have equal, say in things, but I think a lot of men still hold on to that old paradigm of parenting. It is changing. I have got some beautiful dads in my current course who are working back to back with their partners and getting amazing results. I know for my husband, Terrain, he was a fairly conventional parent. His parents were English, kind of lovely people, but kind of quite strict and mainstream type of parents. And when he came into our relationship, already I had my little boy. He was 2 when my husband and I were together, and my husband had no idea about parenting. He was quite young. He's 5 years younger than me. But when we had these challenges with our son, and particularly when he hit adolescence, he said, I will do anything that anybody tells me to do to get me on track. We were so, I don't like to use the word desperate, but we so wanted to heal our relationships and to heal the trauma and the stress that had happened in our home over the years prior, that when we did find a parenting coach who we did align with, he said, just tell me what to do. I will follow your every instruction. And if the parenting coach said, do 100 push-ups every day, that's going to help your parenting, he would have done it. So he was I tell this story of, the dog sitting on the nail. And sometimes, have you heard that story? So it's not until the nail hurts enough that the person's going to get up off the nail. So I think for my husband, that's where we were at. Like, the nail was hurting immensely. It was affecting our relationship. It was affecting our relationship with our oldest son. We had no life because we couldn't go out. Our son was so challenging. And when we did go out, it was so stressful and traumatic. He was getting in trouble at school. We got multiple phone calls from the school, and he got in trouble with the police. He was doing things he shouldn't have, taking things he shouldn't have, hanging with kids he shouldn't have. Use your imagination. I'm talking about as a young teenager here. And so it was a really, really stressful situation. But in some ways, fortunately for us, instead of tearing us apart, it brought us closer together, because we had a common goal of working on this together, which was fantastic. And I'm so grateful and blessed.
I wonder how much of that comes down to the shared determination between the two people, as well as the communication piece, because I'm pretty sure that you both are communicating, okay, we're in this together, how are we going to make this work, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the key. So if you are a couple listening in and you have challenges either in your relationship or your relationships with your children, I talk about getting back to back, because when you're back to back, nothing can get in between. When you're on the same page, when you have the same goals, when you have the same wants and desires for your relationship and your family, then if that is the desire that you want enough, you will do what it takes. And it sometimes just takes having that belief and then just attracting into your life a mentor or a coach who can help you to move forward. But I have had many, many instances where the mother has joined my course and has started getting results, and then dad started creeping in and listening in and thinking, okay, there's something in this. And then I've had some men who are now my biggest supporters and fans, because I've had men tell me, which is heartwarming, that Lillian, not only has this changed my relationship with my children, I'm now a better dad. My kids relate better to me, but I'm a better husband. I have a better relationship with my wife. I have better relationships with my children. The harmony in our home is beautiful. There is not that negative kind of feeling that we had in our home. And even taking outside the home, relationships with other people who you care about, and even with strangers, it helps you to communicate in a more positive and uplifting way. And I actually saw one of your posts. I was having a look on your Facebook page. I think it must have been your current mood with it must have been your birthday coming up. And you said I've written it down, feeling confident and determined to accomplish greatness. So that is exactly what I do in my parenting course. And I love that you use the word greatness, because we, through the Nurtured Heart approach, we look at building greatness within. So building greatness within the adults in the home, and then helping the adults to build greatness in their children.
And I wonder, and that's an amazing point you mentioned, and I wonder if one of the major stumbling blocks is ego. And the reason why I say that is, if I feel, right, I'm tapping into my feelings now. If I feel that everything I'm doing is right, and the reason why my child or my wife, if I use you as an example, right, is not working, is because it's not my fault. It's your fault, because I'm perfect, right? I'm the man, I'm the woman, I am whomever. I'm God's gift to this earth, basically, right? And I would say, for your husband to come into a situation where you have a child before him, I would say that takes courage, because there's not many people that would want to be a step parent, right? And there's not a lot of parents that would say, okay, I'm going to fight for this. I want to make it through. Because many of the women that I date are older. So many of them are either separated, divorced, or they've had children, or they have a combination of that situation, right? Because women in the 40s these days, they have one of those too, a lot of them, right? So when I look at it and I think about it, they still have a sense of honor and duty, because they're trying to make it work many times on their own, like you've mentioned. And now they want to introduce someone, and now they're trying to wear multiple hats, right? For the single mothers and the single fathers, they're Lillian, the woman, Lillian, the mother, Lillian, the wife, right? And that goes for the same thing for the single fathers out there too. How important was it for you to make sure that you were still balanced while juggling all these different versions of yourself, to make sure that, hey, I got to be a mother, I got to be a wife, and I still have to be me?
Good question. Really good question. I probably didn't think about that too much when I was younger, but it is a really good question. And I think it's probably more common these days that relationships are coming out of that blended kind of situation. Either, the person has been married before, or they've been married and have children. My son is in his late 30s and he's still single, because he goes, Mum, there's nobody out there that, and he wants to have children. So he's going to have to find a younger woman who still, can have children. So yeah, it is something that you have to work on. And I know from my husband's perspective, coming into a relationship, and he was very young. I was 20, just about to turn 28, and he was 23. So he's 5 years younger than me. So he came into our relationship very young, with knowing that he had a woman with a child. And we have talked about this in the past. And he realized that when he fell in love with me, that he had to fall in love with my package, which was me and my son. So, but there were a lot of things to juggle quite transparently, because I had an ex-husband who was extremely challenging and abusive, and we had to literally move home into like 4 hours away, just to be far enough away from him, but still close enough so that he could access his son for visitation. So it was really challenging. And then it put on top of that, if you have a child who is a bit more demanding and challenging and intense, that really adds to it. And even for the most connected parents who were connected before this challenging child came along, it is a challenge to do all of those things, to be the parent, to be the partner, to be the lover, to be the friend, and to look and to have a healthy and beautiful and calm and cooperative home. I am so blessed, because of the work that we've done, Terrain, that we now in our home, I'm fast forwarding the story, have 5 adults in our home. So myself and my husband, my 37-year-old son, my 30-year-old son, and my 30-year-old son's partner. She's 32. We all live in the house together beautifully and cooperatively and respectfully. The boys are away at the moment, so it's just Amy and I home. And we whoever's at the dinner table, it ends up being an hour and a half sitting at the dinner table because we have these beautiful conversations with each other. But we have had to work on this because, particularly when our son was a young teenager, we felt that things were not destined to be where they are now. He actually said to us, I'm out of here as soon as I can be. Like, we thought he'd be out of home at 17, and here he is 30 and he's still at home. And he actually just went to a men's, like a 3-day men's retreat, like where they get men to really, look at themselves really deeply. And, it was quite confrontational, he said. He didn't share a lot of the intricacies, but as a mum and as the person I am, I asked him the question, so what was your biggest takeaway from the event? And he said, parenting. That the importance of having a great parent. He said, Mum, I was the only one there, and there were men there from their early 20s right into their 50s. I was the only one who felt they had a functional, positive and loving and connected relationship with their parents. He said the others all had stress and trauma that had come from parenting. And he said, Mum, I'm so grateful for the journey that we've had and the effort that you and Dad have made to be the best parents you can be. So as a 30-year-old coming home and saying that was pretty amazing.
When you tell that story and you share that story, how do you feel reflecting on it all these years later?
It makes me even more passionate to get out and do what I do. Like, I'm in my 60s now. My husband's actually retired from his business, and I'm like, okay, Lillian, you could retire. We've bought a caravan. We want to travel the world, but I'm so passionate about this work, and I want to, and I need to keep doing what I do, because what I do, and I'd love for us to get into talking a bit about the Nurtured Heart approach, but what I do is so very unique. But I'm going to tell you one story. So if there's a parent listening in that goes, oh yeah, is it worth the effort? Doing all this work? Let me tell you, yes, it is. When I've written 6 books, and when I wrote my 3rd book, and I'll just show it to you there, The Revolting Child, A Blessing in Disguise, we did a book launch, and my son had just turned 16. So we had been coaching with our parenting coach for the prior 10 months, or no more, 18 months or so. And he had come out of a really dark place, like where, as I said, you get in trouble with the police, got kicked out of school at 15, mixing with the wrong kids, like really dysfunctional relationships with all of us, with his brother, with his parents and everybody. And we had this transformation over about 10 months. And that's when my husband and I said to this parenting coach, okay, we like the sound of what you do. We're going to do everything that you tell us to do. And he literally did save our lives. He saved our family and he saved our lives. But when I did this book launch, it was the second one I did for this book, because I was already well known in the industry of educating in parenting. I'd been doing it since my son was 5, because I was sharing as we were doing our journey. So we had quite a big audience at this book launch. And at the end, there was a Q&A. And I'm telling this story because it's so important for parents who aren't sure. We had a Q&A at the end of the book launch, and a man put his hand up. I later found out he had a 15-year-old daughter who is really struggling with, but he said, can I ask your son a question? Because they were asking my husband and I questions, and my son was sat up the back. He wasn't all that keen on being there, but he came along because he wanted to support us. And he kind of goes, oh, I guess so, not very enthusiastically, but he stood up. And the guy said the most simple but profound question. He said, Caleb, we saw and we've heard from your parents the journey that you've had prior, and we see where you are today. What was it that took you from where you were to where you are now? And I could see his mind ticking over for just a second. And he said, when I saw the effort that my parents went to be the best parents they could be, I just wanted to be the best son. And so the message there, parents, is our kids are watching us. They're watching the efforts that we're making to make those changes, because many of the parents I coach, I'm like, it's not anybody's fault because it's a generational thing. And I'd love to talk to you about the upside down parenting, because so many parents, and I would say 90+% of parents, are parenting unknowingly, unconsciously, inadvertently upside down.
So when you say that they're parenting upside down, let's expand on that, because I will agree. And this is why I will agree, even though I don't have children, there isn't like a manual, right? It's not like, okay, I'm pregnant, you're in the hospital, and they say, Lillian, here's the book. As soon as a child pops out, this is what you do. Thank us later. The bill is in the mail, right? It's nothing
Exactly.
like that.
Well, we do need that manual, by the way.
We
Yes.
do. We do. only if during childbirth, the manual and the child came out. Right? Because it would be specific to that child as being born, right?
Exactly.
But walk us through it and help us to understand that maybe some of the things that we're doing that is not as healthy, many times it's subconsciously done and not consciously done. So take us through.
Absolutely. So I'll just take a couple little back steps so this makes sense. So when we were mentoring with our coach, his whole focus was on the words we use, the language, and how important, you know, the words that we use are, and how impacting that is on the child. And we really got into that and loved it. And I was, as I said, I was already working with parents and coaching with parents. So I was trying to duplicate and teach others what he was teaching us. However, he didn't kind of have a system. It was just like we would do coaching, you know, every week, and it would be like, this is happening, and he'd tell us, you know, how to deal with it. Excuse me. But a few years later, I came upon something called the Nurtured Heart approach. It's a beautiful story, another universal connecting story, which was just beautiful. I won't go into details, but I was connected in with the Nurtured Heart approach. And when I understood this approach, I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense now. And it was all put into more perspective, excuse me. And the concept of upside down parenting was something that I'm like, what? Like I'm a parenting coach. I know heaps of stuff about parenting. I've never heard of this upside down parenting thing. And when I explored it further, so the Nurtured Heart approach is based on 3 stands: absolutely no, absolutely yes, and absolute clarity. So stand 1 is absolutely no to giving energy, attention, connection, and relationship to things going wrong. And that's where the upside down thing comes in. Not just parents, but I guess people communicating and relationshiping in general, but definitely for parents, and especially for parents who have more intense and challenging children, we give more of us. So we are what Howard Glasser, the founder of Nurtured Heart Approach, likes to call our children's favourite toys. And our children own the remote control, right? They know what buttons to press and what reaction to get, how to get it. They can click their fingers and get a reaction from us. And they sadly learn from a young age that they get more connection and relationship when things are going wrong than when things are going right. So I'm sure most parents would admit, if they thought about their last 24, 48 hours, that when kids are being quiet and cooperative and compliant, playing nicely, quietly, reading a book, in that, you know, whatever they're doing that's following the rules, we might give them some junk, what we call junk food praise. Good job, well done, thank you. A little bit of nourishment, but not particularly nourishing. However, when they start mucking up, fighting with their sibling, you know, being rude, disrespectful, uncooperative, that's when we come to life as a toy, as their favorite. We come to life, our bells and whistles come on, you know, our face goes red. We use a lot more language when the kids are mucking up than when they're doing the right thing. So kids get to learn inadvertently that I get more from my favorite toy when I misbehave, when I break the rules, when I muck up, than when I'm following the rules. So what we want to do, and what we hope to do through Nurtured Heart approach, is to build their sense of greatness and what we call their portfolio. So we want to put things into their portfolio of not that I'm a bad kid, I don't listen, I'm uncooperative, I'm always in trouble, I don't have many, like all the negative stuff that we see young people carry. If you think of it, not a physical portfolio, but if you think of the portfolio that most young people carry around now, it's full of all the I'm not good enough stuff. Whereas the aim of the nurtured heart approach, through not giving energy to the negative, but then giving beautiful, connected acknowledgement and relationship as often as we can, and looking for every opportunity to see their greatness, we fill their portfolio of, I am a great kid, I am a great person, I am resilient, I am respectful, I am cooperative, I am kind and thoughtful, I am a team player in my home, and I am likable, I am a good person. We want them to take that portfolio into their adult life, so that they can then attract the great things that they want to attract, the great partners, the great careers or jobs or financial circumstances, as opposed to the adults out there who are not attracting the things they want because their sense of self is not where it should be. So the beauty of this approach is that we acknowledge our children for every little step towards greatness that we can see. So you might have, Terrain, been disrespectful to me 2 minutes ago, like I'm pretending you're a child. You might have been yelling at me or hitting your brother, or doing something that was showing you were not being respectful. So as a parent, I don't want to grow that. I don't want to water that. I don't want to give energy to that. But I'm looking for the smallest opportunity that you are moving towards being respectful. So 3 minutes ago, you were yelling, you were hitting your brother, you were being disrespectful, but now you're not. Terrain, I can see you're no longer, angry with your brother. You've stopped. You're looking at me in the face. You're giving me eye contact. And that really shows me in this moment that you're being very respectful. And I really appreciate that, because we want to grow the respectfulness, not the disrespectfulness. So often parents want to teach children the rules when the rules are being broken. But the best time to teach the rules or the things that we want to grow are when they're doing them or moving closer towards doing them, if that makes sense.
It does. And one example I like to give, and this is probably something that's going to resonate with all the travelers out there, is I look at it as luggage, right? Like the negative experiences, the disrespectful experiences, those are in a bigger bag. Those you check in. There's a cost to it, just like how there's a cost to negative experiences. Whereas the carry-on is much smaller, but you can take it everywhere you go, and it doesn't cost you everything, but it's very convenient. It makes you feel good. And that's how I compare it, because you ask any child that is raised within, let's say there's 2 or 3 or 4, there's always that one that feels that no matter how good I am, I don't get my parents' attention and affection. Whereas my brother, my sister, they seem to always get the attention, and they're the misfit, they're the troublemakers, they're all these other things, right? And you raised a fantastic point, because there's a point in my life where I experienced this, where I felt no matter how much I accomplish, I wasn't getting the same attention and affection, the AA, from my parents versus some of my other siblings who were having all these troubles, who weren't succeeding. They were getting the more focus. And I've heard some parents say that, well, the successful child we don't have to worry about, but they want your attention. They want you to worry about them. How do you communicate with the parents who say, well, this child is perfect, I don't have to do anything, whereas they spend more time with the child that is causing the chaos in the household?
Oh my gosh, you have asked the most perfect question, but I've got tears in my eyes because I know what I'm about to share with you. Such a great question. Let me take a breath.
Take your time.
So my eldest son, who was the perfect child, like he was always cooperative, helpful, self-entertaining, did well at school, never got a call from the school to say he was mucking up. He was a great kid. And whilst we were raising him with my youngest son, who was the challenging one, who demanded our time, demanded our attention, my eldest son sometimes would say, it's not fair we can't go out because of Caleb. It's not fair we can't go out for a meal because he's going to muck up. It's not fair that we can't have certain foods in the house because of him. And we didn't realise that because we were giving so much attention to the negativity of his younger brother, that he was getting more and more and more depressed. And at one stage, when he was about 10 or 11, we were more concerned about his well-being. So like he's 10 or 11, his younger brother's 3 or 4, which was at the height of when he was really challenging before adolescence. Our eldest son got more and more withdrawn and depressed because he's like, he's now a practitioner. He's become a practitioner because of our journey. But he felt like, I can't even be good enough. He ended up with a obsessive compulsive disorder of cleaning, because when he cleaned, he got some praise. And he felt that he had to do that because he had to be so perfect. And I learnt not until he was in his 20s, when I actually wrote this book and I asked for everybody's input, that he actually attempted to hang himself in a tree at age 13 because he was so depressed about our family and his parents not loving him enough to give him attention because his younger brother got all the attention. So parents, if you have multiple children in your home, I implore you to give attention, connection and relationship, positive attention, connection, relationship to all equally, because if we focus on that challenging child, first of all, they're going to go, beauty, that's how I get all the attention and relationship. And if I keep mucking up, I'll keep getting more of it. And then the kids who are more cooperative are going to be in the background going, why don't I get any attention or relationship from my favorite toys? So when I teach the nurtured heart approach and I teach the positive ways to communicate and relationship, I say to the parents, it is absolutely imperative that you use this across the board with all of your children, because we all seek, it doesn't matter whether we're 5, 15 or 55, we all seek positive connection and relationship. And isn't that what life's about? It's about having connection and relationship, and all the other stuff is just a result of that, you know. So we are all seeking it, whether consciously or unconsciously. And I don't mean to put pressure on parents, but it is, and educators in the same basket, it is absolutely our, whether you call it role or responsibility, to build our children's sense of self as they're growing up, to build their portfolio of greatness, so that they are carrying around, as you said, that, you know, that hand luggage of I am good enough throughout their, you know, as they grow into their teenage and young adult and adult years, so that they do go away and attract the sort of life that we want them to attract as parents, to find a good partner, to have a career or a job or a business that you know, that is inspiring to them, to have the finances that they deserve and need to have the sort of life they want to have. That's what we all want as parents. I'm sure every parent would want that, for them to be kind and for them to be a good person and to have a great life. And sadly, you know, some parents, when their kids get to that older age, kind of go to themselves, well, what did I do wrong? You know, how did we get to this point? And a lot of it is because of the way we communicated with our children and the portfolio that they left home with, if that makes sense.
One of the most heartbreaking things I could ever see happening to parents with their children is that they spend so much time with a challenging child, and that took away from the time they could have spent, some of the time they could have spent with a child that was cooperative, as you mentioned. Yeah. Yeah. And that child who was cooperative, that child who was good, that child who did everything that you ask of them, they grow up to distance themselves to their parents
Yes.
or their parents. And then when their parents are in need, because we're all going to get old one day, we're going to need assistance, right? That child who was the responsible one, who would have been there for them, is not there. And then now you have a situation where the parents are much older in age, they need much more care, and now they're all alone. Have you seen that situation as well?
Yeah, not anything specific that comes to mind, but I do know a lot of adults who are disconnected from their parents, which is so sad because, you know, they still say, oh, I love my mum and dad, but I don't want to be with them or hang out with them, or, you know, oh God, I've got to go and see mum or dad, you know, like it's a chore. I love, you know, and I keep raving about my beautiful family, but we're all in business together, all of us. We all have interconnected businesses. None of us have a job. We all have businesses. We eat together, we holiday together, we go out together, we hang out together. We all have our own lives as well. I don't mean that, you know, we're together all the time, but our kids want to be with us. And I was even talking with my potential daughter-in-law last night, and they're looking at some stage to move on, as you know, as they get their own home and everything. But she said, we want you to come with us, Lillian and Andrew. We don't want you to be at a distance from us. When we have children, we want you to be around our children. We want you to be present. And I don't know, you know, how many parents get that from their adult children. And we see those children terrain now at 14, 15, 16, locking themselves in their rooms, on their social media, you know, not hanging out with their family, but hanging out either through devices or physically with their friends, because their friends are more important to them than their family. And it should definitely be the other way around. And, you know, I was speaking with a mum the other day who has an 18-year-old who has an online gaming addiction. And if he was connected, and she's a single mum, and she has a daughter as well, if he felt connected to his mum, that wouldn't be the situation. I mean, he can still like gaming. There's nothing wrong with that. But she said he's on it for 12 hours a day, and he stays up half the night and then sleeps most of the day, and he's 18. And, you know, if kids, I love what our parenting coach said to us once. He said, do you know how gangs are formed? You know, and I'm like, well, I know what a gang is, but, you know, what do you mean? And he said, well, when a child, especially an adolescent, doesn't feel that their home environment is their gang, that they're connected in their home, that they're seen and heard and loved unconditionally in their home, they will go and seek it elsewhere. So they will either physically seek it, or they'll be attracted to a gang, whether that be a gang of no good, you know, influences, or whether it just be like a, you know, something outside of that takes them outside of their family and their home, because they're not feeling that connection in their home. And then this other group, whether it be a positive or a negative influence, it doesn't matter, but they are making the child feel connected. So, and that's why, you know, good kids can get into violent, you know, gangs that go and steal and harm and do drugs, and sometimes even hurt people or kill people, because that gang leader was very clever and knew how to bring this person in and make them feel a part of the family. And when they feel a part of the family, and then they can make them do anything or encourage them to do anything. So when he told me that, I was like, oh my gosh. So he said, we need to make our home our gang, so that our family, and I don't mean we have to be together all the time, but that so that our kids want to be with us. You know, a lot of parents, you know, who have older children, 12, 13, 14, 15, like they're not hanging out with their kids much because their kids don't want to hang out with them once they get to that little bit of an older age. And that's sad, really, because, you know, to me, my family is everything. And I know that my two sons have my back in every way. My son, my youngest son, now lectures me about looking after my health. Mum, have you had your nutrition? Mum, have you done your exercise? Because I lost my mum to cancer. She was only my age now that I am now. My dad recently passed away of Alzheimer's and dementia. So my boys, and my eldest son is a practitioner. He's a naturopath, herbalist and nutritionist. And my boys now, in a loving way, lecture me to look after my health because they want me to be around a long time and they want me to be healthy, which is a nice reversal. But yeah.
That's a fantastic example, because I grew up in an area where there was a lower income situation and many people were a product of a single parent home.
Mhm.
And outside of the home, to many of us, was so attractive because, like you mentioned, it was that gang, it was that unity. But
Yeah.
more importantly, for us anyways, it was someone who's maybe a little bit older that can
Mhm.
fill that father or that mother role
Mhm.
and be like either a big brother or a big sister or a parent
Yeah.
in nature.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough, and I think many people my age, is that I was able to find that in the place where I think, and I hope most people find it, was in school and in sports. I always say that the teachers are like an extension of your parents,
Yeah.
because they're an educator, they're helping you along, they're teaching you about life, things of that nature. And then
Mhm.
sports would teach you like the discipline of working
Mhm.
within a unit, within a group setting, and things like that.
Mhm.
But these days, what I've witnessed, and you've mentioned when you mentioned social media, is there's some people who are my age, in their 30s, in their 40s, grown men, who are locked away in their rooms. And the only time you see them, if it's dinner time, but they'll take the meal upstairs into their room and close the door. How do you coach parents or work with parents who are dealing with a child, or especially an adult child, that is so disconnected that
Mhm.
they're not only physically isolating themselves, but
Mhm.
emotionally and mentally as well?
It's really tricky. Like I coached this mum the other day. She's doing my course, and she said, "Look, I'm struggling to even do the content of the course because I'm." She was so overwhelmed, and I said the first thing you have to do is build the relationship back up. Baby step by baby step. We have something that in the Nurtured Heart approach that we call miracles from molecules. So we take the smallest little opportunity and try and create a miracle in it. And I did suggest to this mother to find an opportunity to be honest and open and transparent with her son. It's something that our parenting coach taught us, because often as parents, we don't feel like we need to apologize for anything. We're the authority, we're the parent. And when our coach said, if we have anything that we feel we need to say sorry to our sons to do so. And I know when my husband said to my son, I'm sorry for the mistakes we've made. We haven't been perfect parents. We've made a lot of mistakes. My husband broke down. And this is when my son was still really challenging. We were on the start of our journey of repair. And he said, "No, Dad, it's not that. I've made a lot of mistakes too. I've done this and I've done that." So what I suggested to this mum was to actually just to open her heart up and really be transparent with her son, and just say, don't make it about the challenges of the son. Don't make it about the gaming. It's not about the gaming. The gaming is just a byproduct of the disconnection. Just be transparent with your son and say, you know how much I love you, but I've come to realize that I've made a lot of mistakes in my parenting, because this parent identified to me that she does a lot of yelling, a lot of nagging, a lot of threatening, and none of that's worked, as he was growing up in his teen years. And so I said, just be transparent and open, and let him know that you are working on yourself. You are working on improving yourself and the way that you want to communicate in relationship. And I'm sorry for the way that I have relationshiped with you in the past, but I want to make that better. I want to communicate in relationship with you in a way where we both feel really good. And I said, that's all you can do for now, because if you try and start addressing that you shouldn't be on your device for 10 hours or 12 hours a day, like that's not going to get you anywhere. So build the relationship up And then as you start having more, heart-to-heart conversations, you might express, your concern or worry about the time that he spends on his devices. But I really believe if you strengthen that relationship, because she said her son doesn't come out of his room for meals, and she takes his meals to in his room. And I said, well, that's probably something you should stop. If he's hungry, if you put the meal on the table and you tell him dinner's ready and he doesn't come out to get it, well, he'll either go hungry or he'll eventually come out when he's hungry enough. He's not a toddler, he's 18. And she said, oh, well, if I don't take it in, he won't eat. I'm like, if he's hungry, he will. He'll come and get some food. So build the relationship first so that your child feels connected to you, so that you can have those conversations, because otherwise the conversations will be perceived as nagging, as you don't understand, you're old, you're a parent. This is what we all do these days. Like, you want that connection and that relationship so that you can have the relationships and express to your child how you feel. We can't make our children, whether they're 5, 15 or 18 or whatever, we can't make them do anything. Parents who believe they have been able to control, and I really dislike the word control, their children have only done so through fear and intimidation. They haven't done it through being a loving parent. So we want to gain cooperation through building up the qualities in our child, so the child sees themselves as being cooperative, sees themselves as being respectful, sees themselves as being a valued member of the family, so that they want to be that person, not the person who is totally, being oppositional and defiant and rude and disrespectful, but they see themselves as being that other person. And that's why we need to build that portfolio up, so that then they'll start making better decisions. It won't be because of our nagging or our punishing or our threatening, but they will want to make better decisions, and they will start making better decisions. I see this so many, hundreds of examples through my clients who, like, they come to me, and like through our coaching sessions and we have discussion sessions in the course, they're so grateful because they didn't understand they were doing it upside down. And now that they turn it up the right way, and some of the more challenging and intense kids can buck the system initially. They can actually go, stop, they don't even like the positive affirmations. They'll tell their parents to shut up. I don't like hearing that, because they're so used to hearing it the other way that it takes a while for them to open their hearts up enough to take in the acknowledgement that they're getting. But I just keep saying to the parents, just keep doing it, even if they're being oppositional, even if they're saying they don't like it. My son actually told me years later, Mum, when you used to say all that positive stuff and tell me how awesome I was and my greatness, he said, and I used to roll my eyes or, tell you off or, be not happy about it. He goes, but you know what, Mum? I really did love it on the inside. I really was enjoying it. I just didn't feel that I wanted to show that to you in that moment. So that's a good tip for parents if they think their kids are not loving the positive interaction.
And as we close, what's something that you want to leave with the young parents who are early in their parenting journey and they're still trying to figure it out? And as we mentioned, there wasn't a manual being given to them in the hospital, in the delivery room. So what's some advice you want to give to them to help them early on in their parenting journey?
I think to be aware of the power of their words. So I have this analogy. I have a watering can. And if you think about, what are you watering and energizing? So often even from a baby crying and trying to, to get their parents' attention for some reason, or from a young toddler who's throwing tantrums, they're all trying to gain relationship and connection. And just be really mindful of the words you use, because words are so powerful. We often use words that we don't probably even mean, but we use them over and over as parents. So every word that you use is building the child into the person that they're going to be as an adult. So you need to use empowering words, and only water what you want to water. Like, we wouldn't take our watering can full of nice clean water with plant nutrients And we wouldn't go out in the yard and start watering the weeds because we don't want the weeds to grow. So if you remember that watering can analogy, before you open your mouth, ask yourself, what do I want to grow in this moment? Do I want to grow their greatness? Do I want to grow their sense of being kind and cooperative? Or do I want to grow their sense of I'm not good enough, I'm in trouble, I break the rules all the time, I'm disrespectful? So we teach what we want, the qualities that we want to grow. So if you're a young parent, maybe sit down with pen and paper and write a huge, big, long list of all the qualities you would love to see your child grow into and to take in their portfolio when they leave home. But whatever they are, loving, caring, self-disciplined, resilient, kind, cooperative, all of those things. And they're the things to water, not the opposite of those. So don't give the attention, connection, and relationship, because kids are going to break, excuse me, but a shitload of rules, right? They're going to break a whole lot of rules. They're going to muck up a heap of times because that's how they learn as well. But we're going to teach them about what the better ways are through what we give energy and connection to and relationship to.